Now, as you know, the media love going after politicians who break a promise.
The Prime Minister wanted to make his position very clear.
Our position hasn't changed.
And again,
our position has not changed. Our position has not changed.
Once more,
our position hasn't changed. It's very clear. These are due to come in 2024.
But will it change before that?
We have a budget in a couple of weeks. Our position hasn't changed.
Asked whether he considered the consequences of breaking an election promise should the government decide to change the policy.
You're now completely talking about hypotheticals. I've said our position hasn't changed.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese promised at the election that he wouldn't repeal the tax cuts and has insisted publicly and repeatedly since that he won't.
I've always been a man of my word.
It was a golden promise made by the Prime Minister to the Australian people.
And breaking it now could be good policy, but dangerous politics.
Sticking to a familiar line on the promised Stage 3 tax cuts.
Well, our position hasn't changed.
Are you ruling out any changes to the tax cuts?
We have a budget in a couple of weeks. Our position hasn't changed.
Well, we learned today that Australians don't like politicians breaking their promise because according to an opinion poll, which very narrowly, amazingly, says 52 to 48, that under no circumstances should you ever break an election promise. So whoever has been trying to put the underpants up the flagpole in the past couple of weeks about the tax cuts, just a little reminder, majority of the population will remember and will punish you, as they should for this broken promise.
Reducing power prices by $275. That will reduce power prices by $275. Prices by $275. $275. $275. $275. $275. $275 a year.
Oh, yeah, and this one too.
We recognise the cost of living pressures which are there, cost of living. Taking pressure off the cost of living. Cost of living. Address the cost of living. Rising costs of living, the cost of living.
So despite the fact that everything's got worse on cost of living, apparently now the reason why nothing can possibly happen from the government who promised to fix it is because of the floods that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. Jim Chalmers, who of course is the passenger, not the treasurer, because he is standing by telling us, oh, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And inflation will continue for the next little while and interest rates will continue to go up. He said this about why inflation is going to continue to increase in Australia. And it's not true.
I think Australians, unfortunately, I think they understand, because we've been through this before, that Australians will see in the supermarket aisles that when some of the best farmland best farmland in the world goes underwater, that has obvious consequences for crops and for livestock. That is a human tragedy for the farmers and producers and growers involved, but it has consequences for cost of living around Australia too.
So some of that might be true, but cost of living was already going through the roof and inflation was already at multi-decade highs before it started raining. Interest rates have been going up for the past 6 months, as you know. Your spending power when it comes to real wages is back in 2011. Oh, yeah, and then there's that also small thing where the increase of petrol went back up 25 cents, which of course means that all of that food that moves from farm to supermarket ends up costing more because the transport costs more. And then if power is involved in the making of anything, that too is going to cost more. Why? What was it? Oh, that's right. They signed that UN document about 43% and 80-something% renewables in the next 7 years. So while they will try to tell you that the reason that your interest rates will keep going up is because the rain keeps falling down, the reality is it was going up way before that and will be going up way after.